good morning, almost afternoon. I'm going to be covering a lot of specific information about how you become an ATF and the requirements. It's some of it pretty tedious for you to listen to, but all very important. So I'll try to do my best to not spend too much time on it, but you should have a better understanding if you're looking at becoming an ATF at what you're going to have in place before you get audited. An accredited test facility offers, the purpose of it is that it offers a solution to effectively qualify and test welders. That's an easy definition of what an ATF is for. The ATF is an organization that has resources and equipment to be able to test welders to an internationally recognized program, and that is the AWS standards QC4 and QC7. There are many advantages to becoming an ATF. You just heard of several from Renee just now, but some of the others that we have that I want to mention is again, to meet the increased demand as employers and contractors want to find someone that can test their welders to the requirements of the ATF so that they know that the testing is consistent. Schools can serve industry by providing welders for the types of jobs that they need welders for. The ATF program is affordable. It's cost effective, and it also gives an additional source of revenue. This is some of the recognition that you get if you become an ATF. You get a certificate that you can post. You have use of a logo that you can use in your promotional materials. We do have a list. You're added to the list of accredited test facilities according to your state, and that goes on our website. It also goes in promotional material that we do, and a couple times a year we'll run a list of all the ATFs in our welding journal and inspection trends. So what is the Certified Welder Program that this accredited test facility supports? It gives welders portable welding credentials. It demonstrates their skills. It's performance-based, so they don't have to have any training. It's not required. It's usually important. But they can, if they have the skills, they will not need that to qualify to take a test. They can test to several codes that are after the qualification requirements of different code requirements. There's also a provision for welders to test to company-supplied codes. Supplements are also available for these areas: sheet metal, petroleum piping, and for chemical plants. Now, how does the ATF work? Well, the ATF plays a very important part in that it gives individuals that are prepared to take the test a place to go and know that they're going to be tested and receive certification. Also, if you're an educational institution, some of our schools only let students that are registered for classes to be tested, but others, if you can do it, to allow those from the public to come in and also be tested, because it does give an additional source of revenue. When the welder passes the test, the qualification test record is sent to AWS along with the application and a fee, and then following that we send them their certified welder card. And then maintenance, again, is every 6 months, so they have to send in a maintenance application, and that's renewed. They can right now they can renew every process if they did it all at the same time for the one fee, but that must be done every 6 months for it to remain current. There are several processes that the welder can be certified to. These are a list of those in different variables and combinations. Now, how do you achieve accreditation? There's a lot that you have to do. This seems like a lot, but you'll see some of these things seem repetitive, but very important. You need to have, first of all, have a quality system that shows that you have, that the facility has the capability to perform the required tests according to the standards. You have to have a quality manual that shows how your quality system is set up. And it has to meet the QC4 standard for accrediting test facilities, and also QC7, which covers the welder testing. You must be prepared for an audit. This is done through an on-site audit checklist. It comes with your application. You send that in with your application, quality manual, and the checklist. And when that gets to AWS, we do a preliminary review. If we see that there's something missing, or perhaps what is in the checklist needs something more, we will contact you and ask you to fix that first. And then once we feel it's ready to go for audit, auditor is assigned, and they'll do another document review, and we'll contact the facility to schedule an audit. Once you finish the audit, you're notified of the audit results, whether you passed or failed, if there's non-conformances or corrective action that needs to be done. Once that's taken care of, accreditation is given, and you're given a certificate of conformance that you can then post, and you can start certifying welders under our program. Some of the test facility responsibilities are that you have to have an organizational structure that supports your quality system. You have to be able to tell the auditor that you have the capability of giving these welder qualification tests. You have to have a company policy that says that if staff needs to has problems, they have someone that they can go to. There also needs to be responsibility and clear identification of who is the facility representative. So they'll ask other staff, who's your facility representative and what is their responsibility? The facility representative is the person that has the overall responsibility for technical operation of the facility. Excuse me. And also, there must be security measures so that information that's proprietary or confidential is secure and not anywhere where others can get that information. Also, there needs to be personnel responsible for quality. That would be, the responsibility would be a quality manager. Okay, the quality assurance program, or your quality system. Internally, the test facility must have a quality system. They must document the system within their quality manual, and then they have to maintain that quality manual and make sure that it's accurate and up to date. Now, there's several required elements for the quality manual and for the supporting procedures. There must be a quality policy. It says that that the facility will support the quality system and in all the areas that's related to the requirements for an ATF. They must have an organizational structure, an organizational chart that shows where each of the personnel fall and what their responsibility is. They also need to have job descriptions for each of those positions. They also need to have several procedures. Now, I've given you, there's general procedures, and I've listed some of those areas where you need general procedures. Those are not all of them, but those are the main ones. Quality control procedures that are more specific, having to do with test inspection and the WPSs that are used. You have to have procedures for your equipment and maintenance. You have to have arrangements for corrective action if there's any nonconformance and how you handle that. And you have to have a procedure for handling customer satisfaction. And there's more. You must have a provision for subcontracted activities. That would be for NDE or mechanical testing. If you don't have the facilities that at your facility, you can subcontract it. There are procedures for preparing and reviewing records. You have to have all of these. I've listed. There's several there that you have to have a way to review these records and make sure that you have them control. There's also an assignment schedule of the individual responsible for the review of the quality control manual. This way you know that it's continuously being kept current. And a policy for record retention and the security of those records. And also a procedure for positive identification of the test candidate. How are you going to be able to identify each of those test candidates, the tests they took, and the materials that were used, and that kind of thing. There needs to be a management review. It's required that you do this at least annually, and what management review is to look at your quality system, to review your quality manual and all the procedures that support it, to make sure that they're current, and if any need to be updated, that they're done. And management needs to be aware of that review and what's being changed. Personnel to oversee the others that are work in the facility, that work in the ATF. Okay, here's the main responsibility or positions that each ATF will have. You need to have a facility representative. This is the person given authority to make legally binding commitments and statements on behalf of the ATF, and this can also be the technical manager. Many of our ATFs don't have this many staff that they can each have a position, so many times you'll have a technical manager and facility representative as the same person. The technical manager is charged with technical managerial responsibility. He must be a full-time employee and have at least 5 years technical experience. In testing and inspection of welds, many times they're CWI, because to be a CWI you have to have 5 years. So it's a given that you meet those requirements. If they're not a CWI, your quality manual needs to tell how that person is qualified. And again, they may also be the facility representative. You have to have a test supervisor. They're the ones that are responsible for actually giving the welder tests. They need to be a current CWI. And most importantly, they cannot be the same person that's trained that welder. And then if you do NDE testing, this can be subcontracted or it can be done at the facility, but the person who performs that NDE testing has to be ASNT level 2 to SNT TC1A. And you have to show credentials in your quality manual or the supporting documents. Here's some additional requirements. Specific is equipment, welding equipment, meters and monitoring equipment, and measuring and test equipment. Specifically on the welding equipment, that you need to make sure that you have the equipment for each of the processes that you're using, that you're going to test to. You need to make sure the meters and the monitoring equipment is calibrated and that you keep records of that calibration and that maintenance. The measuring and test equipment you must have access to all of that equipment for welder testing. And I give some examples: guided bend test fixture, neck brake testing fixture, and also meet the requirements of the government standard. Also, you need to protect the equipment from corrosion and handling if it's defective, and also personnel need to be trained on safety use of that equipment. Calibration, I think kind of mentioned that, is that the measuring and test equipment has to be calibrated and it has to be traceable to a national standard. Materials traceability, You need to have very good controls on how it's maintained, how it's obtained, how it's purchased, how it's maintained. You need material test records for the base metal, and the filler metals have to be traceable to a source until it's consumed, and it has to have manufacturer certification of conformance. The test methods and procedures, you have to have WPSs. You can either have AWS standard welding procedures. A lot of our ATFs use those. You can also have any other pre-qualified WPS or those that are specific to a code or a specification. Written procedures are needed for test equipment, handling of the test items, and also the testing techniques, how you test the welder. Of course, we talked about environment and safety before, but you need to make sure that you have adequate ventilation and that you follow ANSI Z49.1. The handling of test weldments and specimens. You must have a system for identifying samples or the coupons to be tested through either documenting them or marking them. And also you have to be able to track how they've been received, how they're retained and disposed of, and make sure that, of course, that they don't get contaminated or corroded. So they need to be in a place where that can be controlled, or stored in a place where that can be controlled. Records and test reports. You need to have a procedure for record retention. Any of your observations, calculations, and derived data, your calibration records and test reports have to be kept for at least 5 years. The test records have to have enough information on them that the test can be repeated. And also the welder's files have to have all of the current tests that have been administered. So when you get audited, the auditor will ask you to pull files from each of the welders, and they have to have all of those documents in those files. And of course, you want to keep these records and the test reports secure and in confidence. You need to have standard report forms that are used for the maintenance of the welder qualification tests. This has to be in accordance with QC7. And then again, I'm going to talk about that or clarify this, that if the test facilities, you do not have to have training prior to testing welders. But if you do training and you do testing, you cannot test, if you're the test supervisor, you cannot test any of your students. So what a lot of schools will do is they have 2 CWIs, and one will do the training and then the other will do the testing. And if you don't have that, you can contract a CWI to come in and do the testing for you. If you're the only one there doing the training. Okay, this is for the audits. How often are they done? They're done once a year. So each time you renew or you get reaccredited, your certification or your accreditation is good for 1 year. You get audited for the initial audit the first time, and then on the 4th year, the 2nd and 3rd year, you do a self-audit, and then on the 4th year, we come back and we do another audit. The 2nd and 3rd year is an internal audit that's done by you using the checklist that we provide. And that's sent in with an application. You're attesting to the fact that you have done this internal audit. What's the cost? This gives you an idea. The initial cost is $2,760 plus whatever your library is going to cost. And a lot of that depends on what you're testing to, how big your library gets. And also the travel expenses of the auditor. We usually tell facilities that they should count on about $4,000 to $5,000 for the initial audit. After this, when we come back after the 3rd year, it goes down to $2,400 and the travel expenses of the auditor. And then the second and third year renewal is $360. That's when you send in with your checklist that you've done the internal audit. The cost for the ATF and certified welder, what you charge for your tests is up to the facility. AWS does not determine that. We did a study a few years ago, and the average that facilities were charging was about $250 a test. AWS doesn't regulate that, and a lot of it is driven by the market or the area where your facility is located. AWS does charge each time that someone performs a test and passes, and they want to be in our registry, and that's $35 for each test. And then when they renew their certification every 6 months, it's $15. If they do all the tests to several processes at one time, they can renew all of those for $15, one cost. So it's better. We try to help the welders out to have expiration dates that are at the same time. It also helps them remember. We're actually going to start, we don't do reminders for certified welders, or we haven't in the past. In the next few months, we're going to start doing that. So welders will get something saying that their certification is up. We hope that's going to help some of them in keeping their certification current. And finally, Dennis will talk a lot more about this, but for each ATF, it's important that you look at having an industrial advisory board, working with industry to see what their needs are, and then training and testing your welders to provide them the welders that they need. And I'm not going to go too much into that because I'll let Dennis do that. And that's it.